Tessa Langston smoothed the pleats of her sensible tweed skirt, a nervous habit that did little to calm the tumultuous churn in her stomach. The oak-paneled walls of Attorney Davies's office seemed to press in on her, exuding an air of somber finality. Sunlight, filtered through heavy velvet drapes, cast long, dusty shadows across the Persian rug, illuminating the tension that hummed thick and heavy in the air. Across from her, slunked in a high-backed leather chair, as if he found the very act of sitting an unbearable burden, was Cole Radcliffe. His presence alone was enough to make Tessa's hackles rise. His perfectly tailored suit seemed to mock her more practical attire. His piercing, icy blue eyes, usually reserved for dissecting complex architectural blueprints or devastating business rivals, were currently fixed on a point somewhere beyond the attorney's head, radiating an aura of barely contained impatience and disdain. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The mutual friend who had brought them to this uncomfortable shared space was, or rather, had been, Olivia Vance. Olivia, with her vibrant spirit and infectious laugh, had been the sun around which their vastly different orbits occasionally intersected. Tessa had known Olivia since their university days, sharing cramped dorm rooms and late-night study sessions, forging a bond cemented by shared dreams of making a difference in the world. Olivia, a free-spirited artist, had been the counterbalance to Tessa's pragmatic nature, always encouraging her to see the beauty and magic in everyday life. Cole, on the other hand, had been Olivia's childhood friend, a connection rooted in their affluent, old-money families. Tessa knew little of their shared history, only that Olivia had often mentioned Cole's rigid adherence to logic and his pronounced aversion to anything messy or unpredictable, qualities that Tessa, a social worker whose life was inherently steeped in the beautiful chaos of human experience, found utterly baffling and deeply off-putting. Olivia's unexpected death a week prior, a sudden, merciless aneurysm, had left a gaping, raw wound in Tessa's heart. The world felt muted, a landscape drained of color without Olivia's vibrant presence. Now, here they were, in this solemn office, facing the bureaucratic aftermath of loss. Tessa braced herself for the reading of Olivia's will, expecting perhaps a small bequest, a piece of art, a heartfelt letter. She certainly did not expect the words that followed, spoken with grave solemnity by Attorney Davies, to drop like a bombshell, detonating the fragile peace she had tried to construct around her grief. In accordance with the last wishes of Olivia Grace Vance, Davies began, adjusting his spectacles, his voice a low, steady drone, and given the unexpected circumstances of her passing, she has made specific provisions regarding her beloved daughter, Lily. Tessa's breath hitched. Lily, Olivia's infant daughter, barely 6 months old, a tiny, gurgling bundle of joy with Olivia's startling blue eyes and a shock of fiery red hair. Tessa had spent many afternoons cooing over Lily, helping Olivia with feedings, feeling a tenderness she hadn't known she possessed. The thought of Lily, now motherless, sent a fresh wave of sorrow through her. It is the explicit desire of the deceased, Davies continued, oblivious to the emotional tempest brewing in the room, that full legal guardianship of Lily Vance be jointly granted to Tessa Langston and Cole Radcliffe. The words hung in the air, thick with disbelief. Tessa's head snapped towards Cole, her jaw dropping. His face, usually an impenetrable mask, was a study in pure, unadulterated shock. His eyes, now focused directly on Davies, widened imperceptibly, and a muscle twitched in his jaw. For a fleeting second, their mutual astonishment transcended their usual animosity, creating a bizarre, unspoken camaraderie of utter stupefaction. "Excuse me?" Cole's voice, when it came, was a low growl, laced with incredulity and simmering fury. "Did you say co-guardianship of an infant?" The word infant was spat out as if it were a foreign, repulsive object. Tessa, equally stunned, found her voice, though it was a mere squeak. But, but that's impossible! Olivia knew I would take care of Lily. She always said so. She had imagined herself as Lily's sole guardian, perhaps with the support of Olivia's extended family, but certainly not with Cole Radcliffe. Davies, unflappable, merely raised a hand. Ms. Langston, Mr. Radcliffe, the will is quite explicit. Olivia was very clear that she wanted both of you to raise Lily. She stipulated that you are to reside together in her primary residence, the Vance family home, for a minimum of 1 year, to ensure Lily's stability and to allow you both to adjust to your new roles. The Vance family home. The sprawling, eccentric mansion nestled in the quiet, tree-lined streets of the city's most exclusive neighborhood. A house filled with Olivia's art, her vibrant energy, her cherished memories. And now, it was to be their shared prison. Reside together? Cole scoffed, pushing himself upright, his disbelief quickly morphing into palpable anger. That's utterly preposterous. I have a penthouse, a demanding career, and absolutely no experience, nor desire, to raise a child. And certainly not with he trailed off, his gaze sweeping over Tessa with an expression of thinly veiled contempt, clearly implying she was the last person he would ever willingly cohabitate with. Tessa felt a surge of indignant heat rush to her cheeks. And I suppose I'm just going to abandon my career, my life, to move into your, our mutual friend's house? With you, the man who once referred to children as unpredictable, expensive liabilities? Her voice was rising, a sharp contrast to Davies's placid demeanor. The will also states, Davies continued, calmly ignoring their escalating argument, that failure to comply with these stipulations will result in Lily being placed in the care of a state-appointed guardian, with all financial provisions for her welfare being directed to a charitable trust. The threat hung heavy in the air, immediately silencing them. Lily, the tiny, vulnerable infant. The thought of her being thrust into the impersonal machinery of the state, her future uncertain, was a chilling prospect. It was a cruel, brilliant stroke by Olivia, binding them to her last wish with the unbreakable chain of their love for Lily. Cole's face was still etched with fury, but a flicker of grim realization now crossed his features. He glanced at Tessa, then at the attorney, a deep sigh escaping him. "This is blackmail," he muttered, his voice barely audible, but laced with bitter resignation. Tessa, despite her own simmering anger, felt a wave of cold dread. She understood Olivia's intent, her desperate hope that they, two people she loved, would somehow find common ground for Lily's sake. But the reality of living with Cole Radcliffe, a man whose rigid control and emotional detachment grated on every fiber of her being, seemed an insurmountable challenge. Yet, the alternative, Lily's displacement, was unthinkable. "Very well," Cole said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion, a dangerous calm replacing his initial outburst. He stood, towering over the attorney's desk, his imposing presence filling the room. "What are the next steps?" Tessa watched him, a knot of apprehension tightening in her stomach. This was it. Their lives, once so disparate, were now inextricably bound by a shared grief, a shared responsibility, and a shared, profound animosity. The battle had just begun, and its prize was the well-being of a tiny, innocent life caught in the crossfire of their clashing worlds. She wondered, with a chilling certainty, if they could ever truly coexist, let alone raise a child together, without tearing each other apart. The drive to Olivia's house felt interminable, the silence in Cole's sleek, silent Tesla more oppressive than any argument. Tessa sat stiffly in the passenger seat, staring out at the passing cityscape, its familiar contours now seeming alien and unwelcoming. Cole, navigating the winding roads with his usual precision, might as well have been a statue, his profile unreadable, his focus unwavering on the road ahead. The tension between them was a tangible third presence in the confined space, vibrating with unspoken resentment. Upon arrival, the house itself seemed to mourn Olivia's absence. The vibrant colors of Olivia's eclectic art collection, usually bursting with life and energy, now appeared subdued, almost melancholic, beneath the muted afternoon light filtering through the stained glass windows. The air, usually filled with the faint scent of oil paints and blooming flowers, carried only the lingering, sad aroma of dust and disuse. Tessa felt a fresh pang of grief, sharpened by the unsettling realization that this beloved space was no longer just Olivia's sanctuary. It was now her and Cole's unwilling shared residence. A childcare specialist, a kind-faced woman named Clara, met them at the door. Clara had been Olivia's part-time nanny for Lily, a temporary arrangement quickly solidified by the attorney. Lily, nestled in a baby carrier, gurgled softly, her tiny fingers batting at a dangling mobile. Her innocent presence in the grand, silent foyer felt like a poignant, fragile promise amidst the pervasive sadness. "Lily just had her feeding," Clara whispered, her voice gentle, her eyes reflecting a shared sorrow with Tessa. "She's due for a nap soon. I've put her things in the nursery, everything set up." Tessa managed a strained smile, a brief moment of connection with Clara. She reached out, gently stroking Lily's soft cheek. The warmth of Lily's skin, the faint scent of baby powder, brought a surprising comfort, a grounding presence in the swirling chaos. Cole, however, merely nodded curtly at Clara, his gaze skirting around Lily as if she were a delicate explosive device. "The nursery is prepared?" he asked, his voice clipped, betraying his discomfort. His aversion to children, once a dismissive comment, now manifested as a palpable awkwardness, a disquieting reluctance to even acknowledge the infant directly. Clara, sensing the underlying tension, quickly provided a rundown of Lily's routine: feeding schedules, nap times, diaper changes, the precise temperature of her bathwater, the specific brand of organic cave formula she preferred. Tessa absorbed every detail, her social worker's instincts kicking in, silently resolving to memorize every nuance of Lily's care. Cole, meanwhile, stood rigidly, hands clasped behind his back, his jaw tight, his expression conveying utter bewilderment, as if Clara were speaking an obscure foreign language. He seemed utterly lost, a man adrift in a sea of pacifiers and burp cloths. Once Clara departed, leaving them alone with the surprisingly quiet baby, the true weight of their situation descended. The vastness of the house, once charmingly eccentric, now felt isolating, amplifying the silent chasm between them. Tessa watched Cole, who was now meticulously examining a piece of abstract art on the wall, his back to Lily. His avoidance was almost comical, if it weren't so infuriating. "Well," Tessa finally said, breaking the suffocating silence, her voice edged with exasperation. "This is it. Our new reality. Welcome to Parenthood 101, Radcliffe." Cole flinched at the sarcasm in her tone, turning slowly. "Don't call me Radcliffe. And don't pretend this is anything but a logistical nightmare. This child requires constant, hands-on care. I have a company to run, multi-million-dollar projects to oversee. My schedule does not permit of this." He gestured vaguely at Lily, still peacefully gurgling in her carrier. "And my schedule, I suppose, is infinitely flexible," Tessa countered, her voice rising. "I work with vulnerable families, Cole. My clients depend on me. I can't just abandon them to play house with a man who clearly views a helpless infant as an inconvenience." Their first major clash occurred almost immediately. Cole, with his rigid adherence to routine and efficiency, proposed a strict, almost military-like schedule for Lily's care, assigning shifts and responsibilities with the cold precision of a project manager. He even suggested hiring a full-time nanny, a silent, invisible presence who would handle all of Lily's needs, allowing them to continue their lives largely unburdened. A full-time nanny is an excellent solution, he declared, his gaze unwavering, as if this were the most logical conclusion. We can afford the best. They'll be on call 24/7. Tessa bristled. Lily needs stability, not a rotating cast of caregivers. She just lost her mother, Cole. She needs consistency, warmth, and genuine human connection, not a transaction. Her voice rose, fueled by a deep-seated conviction about the emotional needs of children. I am a social worker. I know what an infant needs. She needs us, even if us is a fractured, unwilling partnership. Their argument escalated, echoing through the grand, silent halls. Tessa advocated for a softer, more intuitive approach, emphasizing emotional bonding and responsive parenting. Cole insisted on logic, schedules, and professional delegation. They were two opposing forces, colliding head-on, their fundamental philosophies of life grating against each other. The very air seemed to crackle with their animosity. Lily, oblivious to the verbal sparring, eventually began to whimper, her tiny cries cutting through their heated exchange. Both immediately fell silent, their arguments momentarily forgotten. Tessa instinctively moved towards Lily, scooping her up, soothing her with gentle whispers and rocking movements. Cole watched, a strange, almost fearful expression on his face, as if he were witnessing a dangerous, unpredictable chemical reaction. He seemed utterly helpless in the face of Lily's distress, a stark contrast to his usual unflappable demeanor. She probably needs a change, Tessa muttered, heading towards the nursery, leaving Cole standing alone in the elegant, silent living room, a picture of bewildered discomfort. The ensuing days were a grueling exercise in forced cohabitation and barely contained friction. Their conversations were clipped, transactional, revolving solely around Lily's needs. Who was on diaper duty? Who would prepare the formula? Whose turn was it to attempt to soothe her inconsolable cries during witching hour? Each interaction was a fresh battleground, their ingrained differences amplified by exhaustion and stress. Cole, true to his word, initially outsourced as much of Lily's care as possible. He hired a string of nannies, each one vetted with the same rigorous scrutiny he applied to his corporate hires. But Lily, with the uncanny intuition of an infant, seemed to sense his emotional distance. She would often turn her head away from him, her tiny face scrunching up in distress when he tried, awkwardly, to hold her, preferring Tessa's warm, comforting embrace. This only seemed to reinforce Cole's belief that he was fundamentally unsuited for parenthood, deepening his frustration. Tessa, despite her mounting exhaustion, found her purpose in Lily. The infant's innocent gurgles, her wide, trusting eyes, the feel of her tiny hand clutching Tessa's finger. These moments filled the void left by Olivia's death, providing a new focus for her nurturing spirit. She spent her days navigating the complexities of Lily's routine, learning her subtle cues, reveling in the small victories of a perfectly burped baby or a peacefully sleeping infant. She continued her social work remotely when she could, conducting phone consultations, but Lily's needs were paramount, consuming most of her energy and time. The nights were the hardest. Lily, like many infants, had her share of sleepless periods, particularly during her growth spurts. It was during these witching hours, when the house was steeped in an eerie silence broken only by Lily's cries, that their carefully constructed walls sometimes faltered. One particularly relentless night, Lily was inconsolable. Tessa had tried everything: rocking, singing, walking the floors, warm bottles. Nothing worked. Her own eyes were gritty with exhaustion, her patience fraying. Suddenly, Cole appeared in the nursery doorway, a silent, imposing figure. He looked even more disheveled than usual, his perfectly coiffed hair slightly mussed, his silk pajamas wrinkled. He had clearly been awakened by Lily's cries, an unwelcome intrusion into his rigidly compartmentalized world. "Is everything all right?" he asked, His voice strained, a clear attempt at concern that sounded almost alien coming from him. "She won't stop," Tessa whispered, her voice hoarse with fatigue, tears prickling at her own eyes. "I've tried everything, Cole. I don't know what else to do." Cole watched her for a moment, an uncharacteristic flicker of something akin to empathy in his icy blue eyes. Then, to Tessa's utter astonishment, he stepped forward, tentatively reaching out. "May I?" he asked, gesturing towards Lily. Tessa, too exhausted to argue, gently placed the wailing infant into his unaccustomed arms. Cole held Lily stiffly, as if she were a fragile, ticking bomb. But then, almost instinctively, he began to sway, a slow, awkward rocking motion. He cleared his throat, and to Tessa's absolute shock, began to hum. It wasn't a lullaby, but a classical melody, a complex symphony he often listened to in his office, its intricate harmonies surprisingly soothing in the quiet nursery. Slowly, miraculously, Lily's cries began to subside. Her whimpers softened, then quieted altogether. She nestled into Cole's chest, her tiny fists unclenching, her breathing evening out. Within minutes, she was fast asleep, a peaceful, angelic bundle against the rigid lines of Cole's expensive pajamas. Cole stood there, frozen, holding the sleeping infant, a look of profound bewilderment on his face. He seemed utterly astonished by his own success, as if he had inadvertently stumbled upon a magical incantation. He looked at Tessa, his blue eyes wide, a question in their depths. Tessa, equally stunned, could only manage a tired, appreciative smile. "Well," she murmured, "who knew the billionaire architect had a secret lullaby skill?" A faint, almost imperceptible flush colored Cole's cheeks. He carefully transferred Lily back into her crib, moving with an awkward tenderness Tessa hadn't thought him capable of. He lingered for a moment, gazing at the sleeping infant, a strange, unreadable expression on his face. Then, without a word, he turned and left the nursery, leaving Tessa alone, her mind reeling. That night marked a subtle, almost imperceptible shift. The animosity between them didn't vanish, but it softened, replaced by a grudging truce, punctuated by fleeting moments of shared purpose. The late-night feedings, the shared burdens of parenthood, began to chip away at the formidable walls they had each erected. Cole, still rigid, still detached, occasionally surprised Tessa with unexpected acts of thoughtfulness. He would quietly bring her a steaming mug of tea during a late-night feeding, or leave a healthy snack outside the nursery door. He still avoided direct contact with Lily when possible, but his awkward attempts to soothe her, even if it was just humming a symphony, showed a nascent willingness to engage. Tessa, in turn, found herself observing Cole with a new curiosity. Beneath the layers of his rigid control and emotional distance, she glimpsed fleeting moments of vulnerability, moments that hinted at a complex, perhaps even wounded interior. The baby, this tiny, helpless catalyst, was slowly, irrevocably changing everything. The grudging truce, established after the late-night lullaby incident, slowly, almost imperceptibly, deepened into a fragile, unspoken understanding. The Grand Vance family home, once a silent battleground for their clashing personalities, began to feel less like a prison and more like a shared, albeit unconventional, space. The rhythmic sounds of Lily's life, her soft coos, her hungry cries, her contented gurgles, permeated the atmosphere, weaving a new tapestry of sound that began to replace the oppressive silence that had previously defined their interactions. Cole, true to his nature, approached fatherhood with the same analytical rigor he applied to his architectural marvels. He devoured parenting books, albeit with a skeptical frown, dissecting theories on infant development and attachment styles as if they were complex engineering schematics. He even installed a sophisticated smart camera in the nursery, not just for security, but to monitor Lily's sleep patterns, temperature, and breathing, creating detailed data logs. Tessa found herself rolling her eyes at his overly scientific approach, yet she couldn't deny the meticulous care he put into understanding Lily's needs, even if it was from a purely intellectual standpoint. He still struggled with physical affection, his hands remaining stiff when holding Lily, his face an unreadable mask even when she giggled at him. But the effort was undeniable. One morning, Tessa woke to the smell of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling bacon. She descended the grand staircase to find Cole, surprisingly, in the kitchen, a stark white apron tied over his designer pajamas, meticulously flipping pancakes. Lily, propped up in a high chair, watched him with wide, curious eyes, occasionally letting out a soft gurgle. "Morning," Cole mumbled, not meeting her gaze, his focus unwavering on the pancakes. Lily woke early. "Thought I'd make breakfast." The kitchen was unused. His disdain for anything less than perfect efficiency extended even to kitchen appliances. Tessa stifled a smile. "Smells good," she conceded, pouring herself a mug of coffee. It was a rare, shared moment of domesticity, unburdened by argument, almost peaceful. They ate in companionable silence, punctuated by Lily's delighted squeals as Cole, with surprising dexterity, cut small pieces of banana for her. It was in these quiet, unscripted moments that their carefully constructed facades began to chip away. One afternoon, Tessa found Cole in the living room, not working on his laptop, but kneeling awkwardly beside Lily's playmat. Lily, captivated by a brightly colored mobile, suddenly let out a delighted, unmistakable giggle. Cole froze. Then slowly, a faint smile, almost a flicker of a genuine human emotion, touched his lips. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, but Tessa saw it, a brief window into a humanity he so fiercely guarded. She laughed, Tessa whispered, sharing the moment, her voice soft. Cole cleared his throat, pushing himself to his feet. Indeed. A physiological response to external stimuli, likely visual. His words were clipped, dismissive, but the slight tremor in his hand as he adjusted his cufflink betrayed the impact of the moment. He was still fighting it, fighting the natural pull of connection. Tessa, ever the astute observer of human behavior, began to notice the subtle ways Cole was adapting. He started leaving his office door ajar when he was working, a silent invitation for Lily's occasional gurgles to drift in. He would often pause his intense calls, listening, a faint frown on his brow, when Lily cried. He began to learn the subtle nuances of her cries, discerning between hunger, discomfort, or just a need for attention, a remarkable feat for someone who had once dismissed all baby sounds as mere noise. One evening, Tessa was struggling to assemble a complex new baby swing, the instructions a baffling maze of diagrams. Cole, passing by, paused, his sharp architectural eye immediately dissecting the problem. Without a word, he took the instruction manual, his brow furrowed in concentration. Within minutes, the swing was assembled with effortless precision, its parts clicking into place perfectly. He tested it, making sure it hummed softly, then simply nodded and walked away, leaving Tessa standing there, a strange mix of annoyance and grudging admiration. "Thanks," she called after him, a little breathless. He merely grunted in response. Despite these small moments of shared purpose and grudging assistance, their fundamental disagreements persisted. Their arguments often revolved around parenting philosophies. Tessa advocated for early childhood education through play, tactile exploration, and unstructured creative time. Cole, conversely, favored a more academic, structured approach, already researching elite preschools with advanced curricula and discussing cognitive development theories in a way that made Tessa's head spin. He even purchased a set of flashcards for infants, attempting to teach Lily shapes and colors before she could even grasp a toy properly. "Cool! She's 6 months old. She needs to slobber on a rubber duck, not memorize geometry," Tessa had exclaimed, exasperated, one afternoon. Early exposure fosters neural pathways, Tessa. It's about building a foundation for future intellectual rigor, he had retorted, utterly serious. Their clashes were like intellectual sparring matches, fueled by their opposing worldviews. Yet, the underlying animosity was slowly, almost imperceptibly, transforming. It wasn't hatred anymore, but a sharp-edged familiarity, like two blades constantly grinding against each other, slowly sharpening, slowly adapting. Lily, oblivious to their ongoing philosophical debates, continued to thrive under their unconventional co-parenting. She was a happy, healthy baby, responding to Tessa's warmth and Cole's structured, albeit awkward, care. She seemed to embody Olivia's quiet hope, a living bridge between their two disparate worlds. One rainy afternoon, as Lily napped, Tessa found an old photo album on a dusty shelf. It was filled with pictures of Olivia and a younger Cole. He was smiling, a genuine, unburdened smile Tessa had never seen before. In one picture, a teenage Cole, looking surprisingly carefree, was teaching a much younger Olivia how to climb a tree, his hands gently guiding her. Another showed them laughing on a beach, splashed with seawater, their faces alight with an easy camaraderie. A different kind of curiosity sparked within Tessa, a desire to understand the man behind the rigid facade. She realized she knew very little about Cole's past, the experiences that had shaped him into the emotionally distant billionaire he was today. Olivia had hinted at a difficult childhood, particularly a strained relationship with his parents, but had never elaborated. As if summoned by her thoughts, Cole entered the living room, heading directly for his tablet. He paused, noticing the album in her hands. His eyes, usually guarded, softened for a fleeting moment as they landed on the old photographs. She was a force of nature, Tessa murmured, gauging his reaction. Cole's gaze lingered on a particular photo, one of him and Olivia as small children, building a towering sandcastle, their faces smudged with sand and glee. A melancholic expression, fleeting but profound, crossed his features. She was, he agreed, his voice surprisingly soft, a whisper from a hidden place. She always saw things others didn't. She never let me forget how to feel. The last words were almost inaudible, a raw confession from a man who prided himself on his emotional impenetrability. He quickly averted his gaze, as if regretting the momentary lapse, and returned to his tablet, the walls snapping back into place. But Tessa had heard it, a glimpse into the depths of his guarded heart. It was a tiny crack in his armor, and it hinted at a profound sorrow, a hidden wound that perhaps only Olivia had truly understood. The baby, in her quiet innocence, was forcing them both to confront not just their present, but their past, slowly, painfully, laying bare the complexities of their unexpected new family. The brief, unexpected vulnerability Cole displayed while looking at Olivia's old photo album lingered in Tessa's mind. It was a faint, almost imperceptible crack in the formidable emotional fortress he had erected around himself, a stark contrast to his usual rigid demeanor. She found herself observing him with renewed focus, not just as the infuriatingly detached co-guardian, but as a man shaped by unseen sorrows. This curiosity, once intellectual, now held a nascent empathy. Their days continued to be a blend of logistical coordination and subtle, emotional shifts. The division of labor, initially a source of contention, had evolved into a surprisingly efficient, if unspoken, rhythm. Tessa handled the majority of Lily's emotional and physical care, intuitively responding to her needs, providing the warmth and spontaneous affection that a baby craved. Cole, meanwhile, unconsciously took on the role of the meticulous planner and problem solver. He ensured the house ran flawlessly, anticipating Lily's material needs with astounding precision, ordering vast quantities of organic baby food before they ran out, researching the safest car seats, and even optimizing the nursery's climate control for optimal infant comfort. He also managed Lily's burgeoning financial trust, a responsibility he handled with his usual ruthless efficiency, ensuring her future was secure. One afternoon, Tessa was attempting to introduce Lily to solid foods, a messy, chaotic endeavor that involved more food on Lily's face and the high chair than in her mouth. She laughed, a genuine, unrestrained sound, as Lily blew a raspberry, spraying pureed carrots across the kitchen. Cole walked in, looking pristine and unruffled from a high-stakes video conference. He paused, his gaze sweeping over the culinary disaster zone. Instead of his usual exasperated sigh, a faint, almost imperceptible curve touched the corner of his lips. He didn't quite smile, but it was close. "The trajectory of particulate matter appears inefficient," he observed, his voice devoid of his usual judgment, almost conversational. Then, he calmly walked to the sink, dampened a cloth, and without a word, began to gently wipe a blob of carrot puree from Lily's forehead. His movements were still awkward, but the deliberate act of care was unmistakable. Tessa watched him, a warmth spreading through her chest, a silent acknowledgement of the small, profound ways he was changing. It was a slow, gradual chipping away at his defenses. He still rarely initiated physical contact with Lily, but he tolerated her spontaneous grabs for his hair or his tie with surprising patience. He began to respond to her COs and giggles with quiet, almost imperceptible nods, and sometimes, if Tessa wasn't looking directly at him, a fleeting, almost shy smile. He even started carrying Lily's favorite stuffed animal, a worn teddy bear named Barnaby, in his briefcase when he went to his office, ostensibly for emergency soothing protocols, though Tessa suspected it was simply because Lily had given it to him. The emotional terrain between Tessa and Cole remained complex. Their arguments, though less frequent, still flared up, often rooted in their fundamental philosophical differences. But now, they carried a different tone. There was less raw animosity and more frustrated exasperation, like two highly intelligent people debating a complex problem from entirely different intellectual frameworks. One evening, after Lily was finally asleep, a rare quiet descended upon the house. Tessa was curled up on the sofa in the living room, reading a children's book to herself, a habit she'd picked up from reading to Lily. Cole entered, a glass of amber liquid in his hand, and settled into the armchair opposite her, his usual evening routine. He usually worked late or retreated to his study. This was unusual. "You're reading about a talking badger," he observed, his voice surprisingly mild. Tessa looked up, surprised. "It's called The Adventures of Bartholomew Badger. It's charming, and Lily loves it. I prefer data-driven narratives," he stated, then paused, taking a sip of his drink. "But I've been reviewing some of Olivia's childhood journals. They were in a box in the attic. She mentioned Bartholomew Badger quite a lot." Tessa lowered the book, intrigued. Olivia kept journals? Cole nodded, a distant look in his eyes. "Since she was a child, she wrote about everything, her dreams, her fears, her family, and about me." He hesitated, then continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "She wrote about how I used to build elaborate forts for her, how I would explain the mechanics of how things worked. Even as a small boy, she said I was always trying to find order in chaos. And she wrote about how my parents were, how they were always so focused on appearances, on legacy, on perfection, how they rarely showed emotion, how they disapproved of anything less than absolute success." Tessa listened intently, her heart aching for the small boy he must have been, suffocated by impossible expectations. "That sounds lonely." Cole's gaze drifted to the flickering fireplace. It was. Emotions were viewed as liabilities, weaknesses. Control was everything. My father believed that only through absolute control could one truly succeed. Anything unpredictable, anything that deviated from the planned trajectory, was to be eliminated. He paused, then added, his voice low, Children, in his view, were the ultimate unpredictable variable. The pieces began to click into place for Tessa. His rigid detachment, his aversion to children, his need for control, it all stemmed from a childhood starved of warmth and burdened by an oppressive need for perfection. He hadn't been born emotionally detached, he had been conditioned. And Olivia, Tessa prompted gently, understanding dawning. She was different? Olivia was the opposite, Cole said, a genuine, albeit melancholic, smile finally touching his lips. She saw beauty in imperfection, found joy in chaos. She taught me how to climb trees, how to get dirty, how to laugh without planning it. She was the only person who ever truly saw me, beyond the expectations. His voice was tinged with a profound sadness that echoed Tessa's own grief for their lost friend. When she had Lily, she was worried she wouldn't be a perfect mother, because she wasn't structured like my mother. But she was so full of love, she knew Lily needed that. He fell silent then, retreating into himself, but the revelation hung in the air, a silent bridge between them. Tessa saw him not as the cold billionaire, but as a wounded man, grappling with the echoes of a past that had shaped his present. The animosity hadn't disappeared, but it was now overlaid with a complex tapestry of understanding and nascent empathy. The baby, this tiny, innocent being, had become a conduit, forcing them to confront not just their present responsibilities, but the ghosts of their pasts, slowly, painfully laying bare the complexities of their unexpected new family. Their shared grief for Olivia and their shared love for Lily were slowly, irrevocably, intertwining their lives in ways neither had ever anticipated. The revelation about Cole's childhood, his parents' suffocating expectations, and Olivia's unique role as his emotional anchor, cast a new light on his rigid demeanor. Tessa felt a profound shift in her perspective. Her exasperation hadn't vanished, but it was now laced with an understanding born of empathy, a professional compassion for the emotional scaffolding he had constructed around himself. She began to see his meticulous organization not as an annoying quirk, but as a deep-seated need for control, a defense mechanism against a world that had once been unpredictable and unloving. The house, once a silent battleground, began to transform into something resembling a home. The nursery, once a source of constant friction, became their shared sanctuary, a place where their individual efforts coalesced for Lily's well-being. They developed a seamless, unspoken rhythm during Lily's care. Tessa soothing, feeding, and nurturing, while Cole, with his newfound knowledge, handled everything from sterilizing bottles with industrial-level efficiency to installing child-proof locks with architectural precision. He even managed to design a modular baby-proofing system for the entire house that was both aesthetically pleasing and utterly impenetrable. One evening, Lily developed a persistent cough. Tessa, already on edge, felt a surge of anxiety. She knew basic first aid, but Lily was so tiny, so vulnerable. Cole, seeing her distress, immediately sprang into action. He didn't offer empty reassurances, he initiated a systematic assessment. He checked her temperature with a digital thermometer he'd ordered specially, listened to her breathing with a small stethoscope he'd purchased, and calmly referenced a pediatric medical app on his tablet. He even called a private pediatric emergency service, calmly relaying Lily's symptoms with clinical precision. Her oxygen saturation is stable, but her breathing rate is slightly elevated, he informed Tessa, his voice steady, his eyes focused on the data. I've already spoken to Dr. Chen. She recommends observation for the next few hours. If symptoms worsen, we take her in immediately. Tessa watched him, a wave of relief washing over her. His detached, logical approach, usually so infuriating, was precisely what they needed in that moment of crisis. He was calm, efficient, and utterly reliable. As the hours passed, they sat together in the dimly lit nursery, watching Lily, a shared vigilance that transcended their personal differences. When Lily's breathing eventually settled and her cough subsided. A collective sigh of relief seemed to fill the room. "Thank you, Cole," Tessa whispered, truly grateful. "You were amazing." A faint flush crept up his neck. "Standard procedure. Risk assessment and mitigation," he mumbled. But his gaze, when it met hers, held a flicker of something akin to quiet pride. The walls around him hadn't entirely crumbled, but they were certainly developing significant cracks. Their conversations began to extend beyond Lily's immediate needs. They discussed Olivia, sharing anecdotes, piecing together a more complete picture of their shared friend. Tessa learned about Olivia's mischievous streak in childhood, her uncanny ability to charm anyone, her unwavering optimism even in the face of adversity. Cole, in turn, discovered Tessa's fierce dedication to her social work clients, her tireless efforts to advocate for the marginalized, her deep-seated belief in the inherent worth of every individual. He listened, his head tilted slightly, an uncharacteristic thoughtfulness in his expression. One evening, Tessa spoke about a difficult case, a single mother struggling to find stable housing. Cole, instead of offering a dismissive comment about personal responsibility, listened intently. "Have you explored the city's affordable housing initiatives? There are often overlooked grants for families with specific needs," he suggested, surprising her with his practical, insightful advice. He even offered to connect her with some contacts in urban development, a gesture that spoke volumes about his burgeoning engagement with her world. Their arguments, when they arose, were no longer tinged with outright hostility, but with a growing exasperation, a sense of, "We're in this together, so let's figure it out." They debated the merits of classical music versus children's songs, the appropriate age for introducing solid foods, even the optimal color scheme for Lily's evolving playroom. These debates were often punctuated by mutual eye rolls, but there was an underlying current of shared responsibility and, dare she admit it, even a nascent form of respect. Cole, in his own stiff, awkward way, began to initiate interactions with Lily beyond basic care. He would read to her from his architectural journals, his deep voice enunciating complex technical terms as Lily gurgled happily, seemingly captivated by the rhythm of his words. He bought her miniature building blocks, not to teach her engineering, but simply because he enjoyed stacking them himself, Lily's tiny hands occasionally reaching out to bat them over, eliciting a rare, genuine Barai chuckle from him. The emotional impact on Cole was evident, though subtly expressed. He began to sleep more soundly, the rigid lines of tension around his eyes softening. His focus at work remained sharp, but he seemed less consumed by it, often leaving his office earlier than before, drawn by the sounds of Lily's play. He was still the billionaire architect, still meticulously controlled, but the impenetrable shell around his heart was slowly, painstakingly, eroding. Tessa, too, found herself changing. Her initial resentment towards Cole had softened into a grudging admiration for his unexpected competencies and, more importantly, a budding empathy for the wounded man beneath the polished facade. She discovered that beneath his cold exterior lay a fierce protectiveness, a profound, albeit awkwardly expressed, sense of responsibility. She also found her own anxieties about Lily's future slowly diminishing, replaced by a quiet confidence in their unconventional partnership. The bond with Lily, their shared love for this innocent child, was the anchor that held them together, constantly reminding them of their common purpose. Lily, unaware of the profound shifts she was orchestrating, became the silent architect of their evolving family. Her smiles, her soft touch, her pure, unfiltered joy were the solvents slowly dissolving the hardened layers of their past and their animosity. They were still Tessa and Cole, two vastly different individuals, but the co-guardianship was beginning to take on a deeper, more meaningful significance, slowly forging them into something entirely new, something neither had ever dared to imagine. The fragile connection, born from tragedy, was slowly, painstakingly, beginning to blossom into an unexpected form of love. The subtle shifts in their dynamic became more pronounced, evolving from a grudging truce into an almost comfortable rhythm. The house, once echoing with the ghost of Olivia's vibrant presence and the clang of Tessa and Cole's clashing wills, now hummed with the gentle ebb and flow of Lily's young life and the developing, if still unconventional, harmony of their co-parenting. One morning, Lily woke with a fever. Tessa felt the familiar prickle of fear, but before she could fully give in to panic, Cole was already there, calm and decisive. He had Lily's temperature checked, not just with the digital thermometer, but with a thermal scanner he'd installed in the nursery's smart home system. He had contacted Dr. Chen, their pediatrician, even before Tessa had fully registered the seriousness of Lily's discomfort. His efficiency was terrifying, yet incredibly reassuring. "Dr. Chen wants us to bring her in immediately," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion, yet his jaw was tight, betraying a deep-seated concern. "I've arranged for a direct transfer to the pediatric urgent care. The car is already waiting." The drive to the hospital was tense. Tessa held Lily close, murmuring soothing words, while Cole drove with a focused intensity that bordered on reckless. He sped through traffic, ignoring honking horns, his usual rigid adherence to traffic laws momentarily forgotten in the face of Lily's vulnerability. In the waiting room, while Tessa tried to distract Lily with a rattle, Cole quietly pulled out his tablet, not for work, but to research pediatric fever protocols, cross-referencing symptoms with potential diagnoses, his brow furrowed in deep concentration. He was preparing for every eventuality, armed with data. When Dr. Chen confirmed it was a mild viral infection and prescribed rest and fluids, a palpable wave of relief washed over both of them. Cole, for the first time, visibly slumped in his chair, a long, ragged exhale escaping him. Tessa caught his eye, and for a fleeting moment, their shared worry, their relief, forged a silent, powerful bond between them. "Thank you," Tessa whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I don't know what I would do without you, Cole." He looked away, a faint flush creeping up his neck. "She's our responsibility, Tessa. Logic dictates preparedness." His words were stiff, but his actions had spoken louder than any words ever could. The hospital incident, a stark reminder of Lily's fragility and their shared vulnerability, irrevocably altered their dynamic. They began to confide in each other, cautiously at first, about their fears for Lily's future, about the daunting challenges of parenthood. Cole revealed his anxieties about his ability to provide emotional support, confessing to vivid nightmares of failing Lily, of becoming like his own emotionally distant parents. Tessa listened, offering gentle reassurance, sharing her own self-doubts, her worries about balancing her career with Lily's needs. These deeper conversations revealed not just their fears, but their aspirations for Lily. Cole, surprisingly, expressed a desire for Lily to be intellectually curious, to develop a love for problem-solving and innovation, a reflection of his own passions. Tessa, in turn, wished for Lily to be empathetic, compassionate, to embrace creativity and find joy in human connection, mirroring her own values. They realized that despite their differing approaches, their ultimate goals for Lily were surprisingly aligned, for her to be a happy, well-adjusted, and thriving individual. The shared responsibilities began to blend into shared experiences. They found themselves attending parent-baby classes together, Cole reluctantly participating in sing-alongs, his deep voice surprisingly tuneful, much to Lily's delight. They took Lily on walks in the park, Cole pushing the state-of-the-art stroller he'd meticulously researched, Tessa pointing out birds and flowers to Lily. There were moments of genuine laughter, unforced and spontaneous, as Lily delighted in a falling leaf or a passing dog. Cole even started engaging with Lily in playful ways, his awkwardness slowly melting away. He would play PKBU, his stern face transforming into a mask of exaggerated surprise that made Lily shriek with laughter. He would build elaborate block towers, only to allow Lily to gleefully knock them down, a feat of emotional letting go that Tessa found profoundly touching. He was still learning, still stiff in his expressions of affection, but the genuine effort was unmistakable. Tessa, in turn, began to appreciate Cole's unique strengths. His meticulousness meant Lily always had everything she needed, organized and accessible. His logical mind solved problems with a detached efficiency that often bypassed emotional turmoil. And beneath his rigid exterior, she now saw a man fiercely protective, deeply committed, and, in his own way, utterly devoted to Lily. She found herself relying on him, seeking his opinion not just on logistical matters, but on parenting dilemmas. Their discussions about Olivia also deepened. They visited her grave together, a quiet, shared act of remembrance. They spoke of the dreams Olivia had for Lily, the kind of woman she hoped she would become. It was during one of these conversations that Cole confessed his profound guilt. "I wasn't there for Olivia when she really needed me," he admitted, his voice raw with regret. "My parents had just disowned me for pursuing architecture instead of the family business. I was so wrapped up in proving them wrong, in building my empire, that I isolated myself. Olivia tried to reach out, to remind me that it wasn't about money or power, but I pushed her away. I didn't want the messiness of emotion." He closed his eyes, a visible tremor passing through him. "I never got to tell her how much she meant to me, how much I cherished her friendship." Tessa reached out, her hand tentatively resting on his arm. His muscles tensed at her touch, but he didn't pull away. "She knew Cole," Tessa said softly, her own eyes glistening with tears. "Olivia always knew. She saw the best in everyone, especially you. That's why she chose you for Lily. She knew, deep down, you had the capacity for this kind of love, even if you hadn't found it yet." Her words seemed to unlock something within him. He turned to her, his icy blue eyes, for the first time, reflecting a profound sadness, a vulnerability that was utterly heartbreaking. He didn't speak, but the silent acknowledgement passed between them. In that moment, the last vestiges of their initial animosity seemed to melt away, replaced by a shared grief, a shared understanding, and a burgeoning respect that transcended their past clashes. The house, once a collection of rooms, was finally becoming a home, filled not just with Lily's innocent laughter, but with the quiet hum of two souls, once estranged, now tentatively, painstakingly, weaving together a new, unconventional family tapestry. The baby, this tiny, unassuming catalyst, had not only forced them together, but was slowly, irrevocably, teaching them both how to heal, how to trust, and how to love. The silent acknowledgement that passed between them at Olivia's grave marked a profound turning point. The lingering animosity, once a formidable barrier, dissipated almost entirely, replaced by an undercurrent of respect and a nascent, tender understanding. The house no longer felt like a shared responsibility, but a shared sanctuary, imbued with Lily's innocent joy and the quiet, evolving connection between Tessa and Cole. Their conversations grew deeper, extending beyond Lily's immediate needs to their personal histories, their dreams, and their fears. Tessa learned more about Cole's cutthroat rise in the architectural world, his relentless pursuit of perfection fueled by a deep-seated need for validation, a stark contrast to his parents' emotional neglect. He spoke of the sleepless nights spent sketching designs, the obsessive attention to detail, the intellectual satisfaction of creating structures that defied expectations. He confessed that his career had been his sole focus, his bulwark against a world that had once felt too chaotic, too unpredictable. "I built walls, literal and metaphorical," he admitted one evening, as Lily slept soundly in the nursery, his voice low and introspective. "I thought if I controlled every variable, if I excelled at everything, I would be untouchable, unhurt. Emotions were a weakness, a gateway to vulnerability. Olivia was the only person who ever truly challenged that belief." He paused, a troubled expression on his face. And now, Lily. She shatters every carefully constructed defense I've ever built, simply by existing. Tessa listened, her heart aching for the isolated boy he had been, for the man who had traded emotional connection for an empire. "It takes incredible courage to let those walls down, Cole," she said softly, her gaze warm and empathetic. "And Lily, she doesn't demand perfection. She demands presence and love. And you're giving her that, in your own way. You're learning." Cole looked at her then, his blue eyes holding a vulnerability she hadn't seen before. "I'm trying, Tessa. I really am. But it feels messy, unpredictable. Everything I've spent my life avoiding." "That's life, Cole," Tessa smiled gently. "Beautifully messy, wonderfully unpredictable. And it's in that mess that true connection happens." Their differing approaches to parenting began to merge into a more holistic strategy. Tessa, drawing on her social work expertise, focused on Lily's emotional intelligence, encouraging imaginative play, teaching her to identify feelings through pictures and simple stories. Cole, ever the intellectual, introduced Lily to educational apps on his tablet, played classical music for her, and even began constructing intricate models of famous buildings with her, talking her through the shapes and structures. They found that Lily thrived on this blend, developing a curious, bright spark in her eyes that reflected both their influences. She would hum along to Cole's classical music while excitedly pointing at shapes in her picture books with Tessa. The daily routines, once a source of friction, now flowed with a comfortable ease. They learned to anticipate each other's needs, silently exchanging Lily during a diaper change, preparing bottles for the other if they were busy, sharing weary but understanding glances during late-night feedings. They began eating most meals together, conversations flowing more naturally, drifting from Lily's latest milestone to current events, to even lighter, personal anecdotes. Cole, to Tessa's surprise, even developed a dry, understated sense of humor, often delivering a sarcastic quip that would catch her off guard and elicit a genuine laugh. One crisp autumn afternoon, they took Lily to a local pumpkin patch. It was a scene of delightful chaos, filled with laughing children and families. Tessa reveled in Lily's wide-eyed wonder at the bright orange pumpkins and hay bales. Cole, initially stiff and observing from a distance, slowly began to relax. He even attempted to hoist a small pumpkin for Lily, awkwardly but genuinely engaging. Later, as they walked through a corn maze, Lily strapped to Cole's chest in a carrier, his face contorted in a mixture of bewilderment and amusement as they navigated the winding paths. Tessa found herself laughing freely. Seeing Cole, the formidable billionaire, navigate a corn maze with a baby strapped to him was a sight she never thought she'd witness. "This is remarkably inefficient," he mumbled, bumping into a dead end, but a faint smile played on his lips. "Sometimes the inefficient paths lead to the best discoveries," Tessa retorted, reaching out to gently guide him in the right direction. Their hands brushed, a fleeting contact that sent a warm current through her. The genuine ease between them was undeniable. They had built something unexpected, a small, unconventional family unit forged from shared grief and forced proximity. Yet, despite the growing affection and respect, a deeper intimacy remained unaddressed. The specter of their initial animosity and Cole's deeply ingrained emotional barriers still cast a subtle shadow over their burgeoning connection. Tessa wondered if they could truly bridge the gap between their disparate worlds, if their relationship could evolve beyond co-guardianship into something more profound. One evening, after Lily was asleep, they sat on the patio, the cool night air a soothing balm. The city lights twinkled in the distance, a million tiny stars mirroring the quiet, swirling thoughts in Tessa's mind. "Cole," Tessa began, her voice hesitant, "this past year it's been challenging, but also unexpected. You've changed so much. You're not the man I thought you were." He turned to her, his expression unreadable in the dim light. And you're not the chaotic social worker I initially envisioned. You have a surprising capacity for order, for resilience. A small smile touched Tessa's lips. We make a pretty good team, don't we? Logistically speaking, yes, he conceded, a faint hint of his dry humor in his tone. Then, his voice softened, becoming more earnest. But it's more than that, isn't it? Lily, she needed us. And somehow, we needed each other, even if we didn't realize it. He paused, his gaze fixed on the city lights. I never thought I'd experience this kind of connection, this responsibility, this love. The last word was almost a whisper, uttered with a raw sincerity that made Tessa's breath catch. He turned to her, his blue eyes searching hers in the dim light. Tessa, what happens after the year? After the stipulations in the will are met? Do we just go back to our separate lives, can we? The question hung in the air, charged with unspoken possibility, and the fragile hope of a future they were both too afraid to articulate. Tessa felt a profound ache in her chest, a yearning for something more, something that went beyond shared guardianship. Their journey had been a reluctant dance, a slow, arduous climb, but now, standing at the precipice of a new beginning, they faced the ultimate question. Could their unconventional family, forged from tragedy and animosity, truly embrace a future defined by love? The answer lay in the courage they found to overcome not just their past, but their fears of a future that demanded an intimacy neither had ever truly known. The question, hanging in the quiet night air,